All right, I'm Jared Moore, and this is Mvskoke Media's Meet the Candidate for the MCN 2021 Council Seat Elections. And today's candidate is the incumbent for the Tukvpvtce District Seat B, Ms. Thomasene Yahola-Osborn. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Yahola-Osborn.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Thanks for having me.
So to start off with, some of the audience will know who you are, and I want to remind the viewers too, we're taking questions from the chat just like our usual deal. But tell us who you are and why you're running for or how many terms is this for you? This is your third, or?
This is my first.
Your first re-election.
3.5 years, yeah, right.
Okay. So what's the game plan for your next term, assuming you get elected?
There's a few projects that I'd like to work on. I'm actually actively working on a few projects right now with different people. And so I'd like to get those started and finished possibly. But I had people encouraging me to run again, and I prayed about it. And so I just didn't think God was through with me yet. So that's another reason. But there's lots of things that need to be changed, I believe, still. We'll see how it goes. But I am Thomasene Yahola-Osborn, and I reside in Wetumpka, Oklahoma, which is where I live. And I've been married, will be 37 years next month. And we have 3 children, and we have 5 grandchildren. And my dad is Thomas Yahola, who was on the council before. And then my mother is the late Pinky Bimo Yahola. And just something interesting that people probably know about me who are close to me, 5 months into my term, my husband and I lost our son in a motorcycle accident. And so that was very difficult. But from that, we established a scholarship fund through 2 scholarship funds. One of us through the Wetumpka High School for a graduating senior, and then the second one is through the Mvskoke Nation Scholarship Foundation, and each of those are $500 that we give away annually. So in order to keep his memory alive, although he didn't like school, we felt it was important to offer scholarships.
That's wonderful. You said there are some things that need to be changed. Could you kind of detail that a little bit, that statement?
You know, what I have found since being on council is that our codes are outdated. And I don't know if people know this, but whenever you are sworn in, you're giving this box of books, and what it is our code. And I believe that those were updated, the books, in 2010. So we're talking 11 years later. And so amendments have been made to those. But what happens is there's loopholes. And so one of the projects I'm working on now is hopefully to be able to correct some of those loopholes. And that's one thing that I definitely see. Just trying, not really possibly creating law for certain things, but amending and just trying to fix some of those things so it'll be more clear.
Well, on that front too, we're speaking about the code. Earlier, I think time gets compressed for me, but I think it was last month or the month before, I had the MC and Attorney General Roger Wiley on the program, and we were talking about the code because there's code on the books right now that says the Attorney General is supposed to be publishing the updated code, and what he said was he's just too busy to do it right now. And what he suggested is that some councilmen pick up legislation to try to have the Supreme Court take over that duty, because right now, if you go on the creeksupremecourt.com, they're the ones that are actually publishing the code on the web, even though they're not required to do it by law or anything. So is that a discussion that you've had with the AG, or has there been any communication along those fronts, or what do you think of that idea?
I have not, but that's a great idea, because when laws are amended, when we do that, even now, is that where do they go after that? You have to really be on top of it, because if a law was amended in a certain code 10 years ago, and me being 3.5 years into my term, and if I go to these books that amendment's not going to be there.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a problem for us too as news gatherers, is we're trying to find out what the updated code is, just like the legislature. We have a question that's popped up in our chat here. It goes, what will you do to expand public hunting, fishing opportunities for citizens on idle, undeveloped, tribally owned properties within the reservation boundaries?
We actually had legislation on the council floor. It's been several months ago, and I think our sovereignty was the issue. There's I don't know that, I'll just say this, and I'm just being honest. We've got some major issues that I believe that the legislative branch and the Attorney General, as well as the executive branch, need to come together on to decide what our next steps are since this Supreme Court ruling. And so I'm just going to be honest. I haven't really thought about that because we've had so many other things that have come to the table for us. So, just to be honest, I haven't really thought about it. And I'll probably not in the forefront for me right now, but that's not to say it's not on the forefront from another legislator or possibly even another candidate.
As a seated councilman, and I wanted to touch on this because you just kind of mentioned, are the three branches of government working together right now? What do you see, and what could you propose to make that, if not so, that they could work together better in the future? What is your take on that?
Yes, sir. I'm very simple-minded, and this is my take on it. There are, again, as I mentioned, there are so many big issues that the tribe has right now following the Supreme Court ruling. We have taxation, we have our children, we have jails. So those are the three things that just kind of pop out to me. What I would like to do, what I would like to see, is that we have maybe possibly three legislators and the executive branch get together along with, I'm going to use children and family, for instance, regarding ICWA. Mm-hmm. I feel like the executive branch, the legislative, possibly three, and then maybe a couple of employees from the children and family and the AG. Somebody just sits down for a day and say, okay, the chief, give us an update on what's happened so far, and then let's move forward from there. When I talk about children and family services, I'm an adoptive parent, and I've heard one of the candidates say, and I've heard people say, that we need a home for our children, those that are in DHS custody. And what my fear is that when we've had discussions before with Children and Family Services, and this was probably last year, is that the state could come and say today, okay, Creek Nation, we're giving your children back to you. Mm-hmm. We don't have enough foster families, foster homes. And so when we have 200 plus children in state custody, and we possibly have only 13 foster families that are certified, we aren't ready to receive them. So what is our next best solution? And again, a candidate had mentioned a home for our children. For me personally, that would be difficult for me to see all of these kids go into a home. Mm-hmm. But if that's what needs to happen, that's what needs to happen. But as I said, a candidate had mentioned that, and she has been in that realm. I'm willing to talk to her and let her tell me, this is how it works, because I'm not seeing it, and I'm open to it. I'm open to discussions. But I think, as your question was, I think that's what it is. I think it's the two branches coming together along with the AG and those that it affects, because I personally feel as a legislator, I can't make law for something I don't know about.
Right.
I think it's important that we bring the right people to the table so they can tell us what they know, because that's their specialty. That's their experience. That's their expertise. It's all of those things. So that's what I would think needs to happen is those people need to come to the table and just talk it out until, I think we have to do it slow, but not so slow that we're a year and a half in.
Right.
And people want to know, our citizens want to know what the status is on these things. And if we're not out there telling them what's going on, then people start making assumptions about what's going on.
Yeah.
Because no one is saying anything.
Yeah, it's a communication problem.
Yes, sir. Definitely.
We just had another question pop up here in the chat, and it goes, the vast majority of citizens are prohibited from being candidates or holding office in the National Council, and the pool of eligible candidates continues to shrink. Should it be reviewed or repealed?
Are we talking about the blood quantum?
I'm assuming
Is that what it refers to?
I'm assuming that's what the question, and T.Y. Prohl, if you could clarify, I'm assuming that's what he's talking about is the blood quantum requirement to hold office.
Yeah, I have thought about it, and I believe at this point, I would have to vote against it, but I will say this, I know that it will come in the future.
Just, while we're talking about that topic, how do you think that will get changed, in the future, the day that happens? Because this is a perennial campaign question that candidates are asked, and many candidates often say that it shouldn't be changed now, it's too early to change it, but I think it will change in the future. Do you think it's going to be a sea change amongst candidates where they say, I'm for it now, or is it going to be some other type of thing, like, for instance, some type of a Supreme Court ruling or something like that would come down on the nation? What is your theory?
I think it'll be possibly a constitutional change, because if you look at the chart for the number of full-blood people that we have, and that is very thin now, and as time goes on, and we're seeing it now, is that the full-bloods will run out. Your 3/4 and above will run out, so I just think it'll be a constitutional change at some point. And that you're right, whether it be candidates or even legislators that will make that change in the future.
Right. Well, I guess to refine that question a little bit do you think that that's going to be a constitutional amendment process that's going to come from National Council, or will it end up having to be citizens that do a petition to get the amendment on the ballot, that type of a thing? Which one do you think it would be, in your opinion?
I think it'll be the people.
The petition, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. We've kind of talked about earlier the taxes and McGirt and the reservation status and everything. So those are some of my questions. I'm going to go through them real quick while we're waiting on anybody else. And I want to remind everybody, you can post your questions in the chat. But, or actually, let's touch on COVID first. What is your opinion on the Mvskoke Creek Nation government response to the COVID epidemic?
I think we've had a great response, and I am so appreciative of our Department of Health being able to offer the COVID vaccine not only to our citizens and employees, but also to our non-native people as well.
Do you think that there's been enough help from the government to citizens, or should there be more?
Government meaning?
Well, we saw with the first disbursement of federal funds to the tribe, there were protests on the complex with citizens saying, there's too many requirements to get this, and I'm not being helped, and those type of things. And then we're seeing another disbursement that's going to go out now, thanks to the council's legislation about the $2,000. Do you think that there needs to be more? Is this going to be an ongoing thing as we see spikes, or what is your take on it as a councilman who's going to have to bring legislation or not bring legislation? What do you think?
I think that we're going to have to wait on the response from the citizens, because, there was a survey that was sent out to the citizens to hear what the needs are. I think that's where we need to go with it. So I don't know when those final results are coming in, mm-hmm. but I think that's what we are waiting on, is just to hear what the people want and need.
I see. We're seeing some efforts by the state, and I'm talking about the state of Oklahoma, to try to challenge the reservation status and even trying to reverse the Supreme Court's ruling in McGirt. what do you think is the council can do, or do you have any plans to do anything to try to support the fight to maintain our reservation status? Or you have, like, what is your opinion on that situation?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the AG's office. I don't know where we are as a legislator from the executive branch side, because again, there are so many big issues. I don't know where they are on taxation. I don't know where they are on ICWA. I don't know where they are on the jail. So I think it's just a matter of the branches getting together and saying, okay, Chief, where are you and what are you doing? And then what do we need to do as a legislative branch? Because I think we need to be flexing our muscle.
Okay.
I really do.
That kind of touches on my question about state taxes. Do you think citizens should pay state taxes if they live on the reservation?
I do not.
We just had a question. Okay, we got a question in chat here. Let me read it as verbatim. If we decide to stubbornly continue to violate Article 2 of our treaty, how do you propose we make up the loss of federal funding that will likely transpire as a result of that misguided decision?
Article 2 of...
I believe Article 2 is the article of the 1866 treaty that refers to the freedmen being admitted into the tribe.
Okay, so can you ask that question again, please?
The verbatim, it says, if we decide to stubbornly continue to violate Article 2 of our treaty, how do you propose we make up the loss of federal funding that will likely transpire as a result of that misguided decision? So I think what the question they're asking is for us for the tribe to get compliant with the treaty, which is the ruling in McGirt, is that the treaty is the law of the land. We will have to either admit the freedmen or not admit them. And the person asking the question is implying that the federal funding may be pulled out of programs if we don't comply with the Article 2 of the treaty. And T.Y. Pearl, you can tell me if I'm interpreting your question correctly. But I think that's the question: is where do you stand on the freedmen issue in regards to the 1866 treaty?
At this time, I don't support it.
Okay. Jumping back to the taxes issue, has there been discussions on the council about any legislation that the tribe could pass that will maybe establish tax code for the tribe, or to work out some type of agreement with the state of Oklahoma to share tax revenues or something? Is there any plans for that in your...
No. Again, it goes back to the legislative branch. I'm sorry, the executive branch, and knowing where they are and what they are doing.
So, in your opinion, what's the communication breakdown there? Are you guys not receiving communication from the executive branch, or is there an animosity there? What's happening there?
I believe, in my own opinion, there is something going on there. I just feel that I know that we are separate branches, but I feel like that in this case, with the Supreme Court ruling, we need to be working together because people are watching us. Our neighboring tribes are watching. The state is watching. And unfortunately, some of the things that have come out of 2020 have a negative look on the nation as a whole.
What could you elaborate on those? What are you referring to specifically?
Well, we've got. I'll just use this as an example. I believe Chief Hill. We're having a hard time getting Chief Hill's nominees confirmed. I believe we still have one that has not been confirmed, and that is the tax commissioner. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about taxation, mm-hmm. but yet we didn't confirm who Chief Hill nominated.
And why is that? Why are those confirmations not getting through? Are the candidates not good, or is it? What's the holdup? I guess is the question.
I can only speak for myself. Mm-hmm. I think there's only been a couple of nominees that I did not vote for, and I'll just be honest. I had people reaching out to me regarding those nominees, citizens reaching out to me regarding those nominees. But, you know, the council, they do interview these candidates, these nominees. And for the most part, other than that, I voted for everyone.
I see. So it's other individuals on the council that are choosing to not confirm the count.
Correct.
We've had a whole bunch of questions pop up. I'm going to just run through them as quickly as we can to try to get them in before we get to the 6:30 mark. The first one being, do you support the decision to cancel the Mvskoke Nation Festival?
I do.
All right, we're going to move on down the line. There is a shortage of affordable housing across the United States and in the Mvskoke Reservation. What are your plans to fix this issue in terms of providing more housing options for Creek citizens?
I actually do have a plan that I have proposed to Chief Hill regarding additional housing. And I think the holdup right now is seeing what we can do with the ARPA funds, if that's going to allow us to build more. And if it's not, then I'm going to be re-proposing that plan to Chief Hill.
Okay. The next question is, if re-elected, will you become responsive to the issue of unhoused relatives? Have you reached out to Raising Native Hope, or are you willing to commit to doing so?
I actually spoke to Chief Hill about it. I think for me right now, it's not that I haven't thought about it, because again, I reached out to Chief Hill, but one of the projects that I'm working on currently is veterans housing.
Okay.
So it's hard to work on several projects at one time to ensure that I talk with the right people, not only within the executive branch and also the employees, if I'm allowed to, because I will go through Chief Hill before I do that.
I see. I'm going to move on down the line. Do you support officially changing the name of the nation from the spelling of Mvskoke to Mvskoke in our language?
Yes, sir, I do. We actually have a few departments, a few entities of the tribe, like Mvskoke Media, already using it. So why not? You know, and I know it'll cost money, but I think it's important that we do that.
Okay. Here's another question. Minimum wage has not been increased since 2008 or 2009 when it was raised to $10 an hour. Are you planning to promote raising minimum wage for the Mvskoke Creek Nation?
I'd be willing to do that, but I think what we need to do is ensure that our job descriptions are up to date.
Okay.
Because I've heard, you know, around that those job descriptions are outdated, and also that duties are added on to employees without any increase.
Right. All right. And then we had another question pop up. And by the way, this is just for the audience and everybody. We're at 6:23 now, so we got about 7 more minutes. If you got a question, try to pop it into the chat before we sign out here, because I also want to give the candidate an opportunity to talk about any focused issues that they're campaigning on before we get out of here. The next question is, do you support legislation that would give citizens and Mvskoke Creek Nation employees the right to collectively bargain and be represented by labor unions?
I haven't thought about that, so I just don't think I could comment on that right now. It's nothing I've thought about.
Okay. The next question is, in the last few years, the cost of living adjustment has not been incorporated into the budget. Do you have plans to implement COLA for employees annuals or biannually?
You know, I think what we've done in the past, what I've seen is instead of giving a COLA, I believe that the employees have gotten the bonus at Christmas. But again, it goes back to those job descriptions. I certainly feel that, yes, the cost of living should be given to the employees each year. But that's what the managers, they have to put those, into their budget. And of course, it has to go through the secretary and then to the chief's office. So ultimately, but I would support it, if given the opportunity. But I've not, this is the first time I've heard that question addressed to me personally.
Okay. And then we have a comment, and this is just a comment, not a question, according to the poster. It says, my uncle lived on the streets of Tulsa with no tribal outreach. He was a veteran, and it should be very obvious that the issues are related. Not a question, just a comment for the candidate. And that's coming from J. Perryman Carrington.
Thank you.
All right. So that looks like we don't have very many more questions here. Is there an issue that's like central to your campaign, something that you would like to talk about before we sign off today?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to one of the things, again, and I've said this before, is that I do have housing experience, 27 years of housing experience. And so I have been afforded the opportunity to visit with Secretary of Housing Beauty. And we have talked about some different things regarding housing, as I mentioned earlier, about the possibility of increasing housing. And I do want to say something as well. The HUD funding, that our Indian housing plan, that dictates to us how many houses we can build or buy per year. Mm-hmm. And then, when you're saying 30 houses per year possibly, but you have 300 plus on the waiting list, you're not getting anywhere. Right. So again, that's where I have proposed a plan to Chief Hill, and I'm just kind of waiting to see what those ARPA funds are going to do for us in that area. And also with veterans housing, one of the things that we did before COVID, and then COVID hit and the meetings ceased. But we actually were visiting with Grover Wynn. We were visiting with housing. We were visiting with Pam Sparks with the HUD VASH program, and also Tony with reintegration. And this is my plan for veterans housing. And again, I have offered this to Chief Hill, is that if we could possibly build veterans housing utilizing SIP panels, we do have SIP panels stored somewhere that are just sitting. We have the property already in the country club that we're not doing anything with. And then also Tony Fish with reintegration, he actually offered plans, the plans that we used for their buildings at reintegration in Henrietta, that we could use those plans. Mm-hmm. All of those are free. So why not?
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I have. And then also I think for those that are affected daily in their line of work is our mental health. I want to be able to do something in regards to that, our well-being, because we have, our light horse police that are going out on a daily basis and they're seeing things, our children and family services as well when they have to go out to these homes for children. And then also I talked to a lady that is with education. And with our summer youth, we've got a big number of our youth, their mental health is not good. So I'd really like to kind of somehow focus in on being able to help those youth. But this is the thing, it starts in here. You've got to recognize that there's an issue and able to reach out for help. So again, mental health is a big thing for me, and I think that really stemmed from losing my son, because that was traumatic for me.
Yeah. We had one more question, and I'm just going to ask this last question because we've only got a minute left. I'm sorry for your loss, by the way. That's a horrible thing to have happen. The last question here in the chat is, do you support allowing same-sex marriage under our laws?
No, I do not.
Clean cut. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. I do want to mention to you that once we get through the primary process, If you make it over to the other side, we're going to try to have same type of a forum with both of the leftover candidates there to talk about these same type of issues, but kind of have a didactic with the candidates involved too, both of them at the same time. So we'll probably be reaching out to you if you make it past the primary process to do that. I want to thank you again for coming on the program today. And with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. And we have candidates scheduled all this week at 6 p.m., barring that there is a candidate that needs to reschedule. So keep tuning into Mvskoke Media, and we'll keep the information coming. So, Mado.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.